It is exactly 12 o'clock in Sydney, Australia. And for those of you joining from other places in Asia or maybe around the world, Ken and I are thrilled to have you with us today. So we're going to be talking about a topic that's really close to my heart. And I know Ken, as a national sales leader, and you've been a sales director before and a business director. I mean, we will introduce that shortly. There's so many passion points around this. So we're going to talk about unlocking the secrets to time and territory management to transform your sales pipeline into the ultimate growth machine. So before we get stuck into that, I'm just going to do an introduction around Ignite Purpose. We are a small global practice that we use the Hive methodology to actually fuel all our work, which is basically saying that there's an ecosystem within every organization and community. And what we try and do through our work in our practice is equip people to be the best they can to drive the performance and outcomes from a purpose-driven perspective together. And I think that's really exciting because we'll talk about that in this today's session. Some of the areas, of course, we cover is sales development. We've got a media business within our practice. We do HR consulting, learning and development, growth and coaching programs, high performance teaming. We do a lot around resilience, which is really important in today's world. We have our best fit recruitment practice within our bigger organization. We do performance management and strategy workshops. Over the last 12 plus years, we're almost 13 years old, we'll be 13 in August. We've coached over 7,000 people, had over 25,000 coaching hours, which I think is pretty cool. And I'm so grateful. So a little bit about our global community. We have got strategic partners across the world in all these places, which really warms my heart. And we're just continuing to build our practice as we build our global community. A quick introduction to myself. I am the CEO and the founder of this practice, and I've got over 25 years experience in sales consulting and performance improvement, as well as org change and leading organizations. I'm incredibly passionate about this work. And so I'm thrilled to actually partner today with Ken Johnston. So Ken, please introduce yourself to everyone that's shown up on our webinar today.
Yeah, thanks, Christina. Every time I do this, I start by feeling old, to be honest. I've got 30 odd years of sales leadership experience across a variety of different segments. So I cut my teeth in FMCG. I've spent time in industrials, liquor, the hardware industry, subscription software, and more recently in manufacturing, all at varying degrees of sales leadership and senior sales leadership roles. So I think to sum up my career in one word, varied is probably the right word. That said, what that variety has given me is a really good understanding of what does and doesn't work, particularly from a sales leadership perspective, because the principles remain very much the same.
And we're going to talk about that today because what Ken and I have discovered, and we've discovered this through the consulting work I do with organizations and through Ken's career, and Ken's done consulting work too, is there's a gap in sales leadership that's happened. It's a vacuum that we've discovered, and it's just a loss of some of the key things that really need to be put into practice. So we will talk about that, but we've also got a podcast series that we've launched, which if you want to dial in, the very first episode has already gone live. So a little bit about the sales funnel and the funnel flywheel. I mean, this is a big statement. And for any business leader out there, I'm sure you're going to shake your head and go, yes. Doesn't matter how sexy your CRM system is. The sales funnel is fundamentally broken because we're trying to pressure people to use the CRM to help us understand the statistics, the prospective revenues, all of that stuff. And we're not getting the results we need. And we're not getting it because there's a lack of momentum. Now, we're going to share some stats with you, which actually is quite profound. 20% of sales teams, only 20% of your whole sales team possibly forecasts within 5% accuracy. That means from an organizational perspective, what, Ken? If only 5% of the sales team is accurate in their forecasting, what does that mean?
Well, ultimately, almost impossible to properly run your business. Yeah, from a business perspective, you need that forecast because you need to understand your revenue and your margins so that you can actually manage your costs. If you don't understand the variables and the key financial impacts on your business, it is almost impossible to run it successfully.
Mm. And we're going to come back to this, and this is why some salespeople think the CRM and the pipeline's a management tool, but actually it's not. It is a data tool, but we want to flip the dial on this conversation today around that. 90% of B2B enterprise sales teams often rely on the gut feeling over data-driven forecasting. And then, of course, that impacts. What do you think about that stat?
I think that stat is quite frightening, to be honest. In today's age where we have so much access to information, and if we are using our CRMs well, we have all of our own information plugged in and available to us. The fact that we're not using that information and relying on gut shows a really clear gap somewhere in that process. But ultimately, your forecasting is just proof that you know your business. If we're relying on gut, then we're probably proving that we don't.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. And the gut often comes in that, oh, but it's coming. When people tell me, salespeople tell me that, I have a heart attack because I know they don't know what they're talking about. They're not actually giving me the detail about the actions and the commitments and their understanding of what's coming. Here's a final one. And this one scares me because as a business owner, salespeople are a massive salary component for an organization, and also often the variable that we can't guarantee on the return. 71% of opportunities get lost when they aren't actively managed in the pipeline. That's shocking and scary and real.
Yeah, no, I think that's natural, to be honest. If you're not actively managing that opportunity, I think you should expect that you're going to lose it. Yeah, the reality is that our customers' businesses and their behaviours and things do change. If we're not actively managing that pipeline and managing that customer and making sure that we understand the changes in their business and truly understanding their needs, then the reality is we're probably not going to get that business.
Beautifully said. Beautiful. So there has to be a change, and I love the flywheel concept. So we're going to introduce the flywheel concept to you today, which is back to basics, a little bit on steroids, because what we want to be able to do is remove the barriers to momentum. Simple. But in order to do that, a little bit of a transformation needs to be applied across the organization, from mindset to discipline to practice, and practice needs to be reinforced again and again in order to create the flywheel. I'm passionate about it. I mean, we're obviously going to make this available to you. Should we play them our video?
Yes.
Okay, so I am a child at heart, so there are two kinds today. So if you're slightly judgy, please just relax and breathe through it. We want to introduce the flywheel concept to you in a simple way. Here we go.
I've been thinking a lot about sales funnels lately, and I've come to a realization. The traditional linear sales funnel is, well, it's dead. But don't panic. Something better has taken its place. The funnel flywheel. Unlike the old funnel that ends at a closed deal, the flywheel keeps spinning, putting customers at the center of an ongoing cycle. It's like, imagine you're pushing a giant wheel. Once you get it moving, it's easier to keep it going than to start it up again. That's the funnel flywheel. It's not just about moving leads from awareness to conversion. No, it's about prioritizing customer engagement, retention, and expansion. It integrates sales coaching and accountability, guiding sales teams through each stage while maintaining velocity and strategic execution. Now, let's explore how this flywheel actually works. It operates through progressive stages, each one building on the last. In the first stage, we're identifying needs and presenting solutions. The salesperson needs to understand the customer's pain points and present the product as a solution. The customer, in turn, needs to acknowledge that the product could solve their problem. But remember, the flywheel doesn't stop there. It keeps spinning, looking for ways to expand the relationship.
That last phrase, looking for ways to expand the relationship. when I was in sales, that's what changed the game for me. Recognizing it wasn't a zero every month, but recognizing I could actually build a forecast that flows. What do you think?
Oh, look, I think the key in this is the customer-centric growth piece. Almost every major company now talks about its approach to customer centricity. We have such a focus around voice of customer and net promoter scores and everything else. Really the key is that you are constantly working with your customers. You are constantly listening to them, asking questions, making sure you understand their needs so that you can keep the ball moving. So if I've closed one deal with them, no problem, I can move on to the next, or they can refer me to somebody else that I can potentially move on to the next deal with. But unless we're completely focused around that customer, then you can guarantee you're getting stuck.
I love what you've just said. I was speaking to a CEO of a 600 strong organization where probably 80% of the business is sales, right? And we were having a conversation, and the heart of the customer is one of their values. And I said to him, as we were going through the process, I said to him, how do you measure the love your customer has for you? How do you measure their joy? How do you measure what they don't like? And he said, well, we're struggling to do that. I said, and yet that's one of the strategic elements. And they did over $1 billion worth of revenue. And he was saying to me that this is one of their key things that they need to do in order to keep growing.
I think it's, sorry, Christina. I think it's key for every business is how do you keep momentum with that customer.
We run a business acumen simulation where we teach people how to have a look at financial acumen. And it's a board game with poker chips, Ken. And there's one thing that always stands out to me in that session is that it says the customer's voice needs to be brought into every area of the organization. And that doesn't always happen because that's part of the flywheel.
And interestingly enough, so many companies are now searching for other ways to do that because they're actually not getting it from sales. So, all of these surveys after every phone call we make with the supplier, etc., it is all trying to understand what do you think as a customer. The reality is, if the sales team is properly customer focused, they should be able to provide that insight, and they should already be acting on that insight. The true measure for me on whether or not we have satisfied a customer is repeat business.
Yeah. Yes. And they come back and they're in a relationship with us.
Yep.
All right. So here's the big question. Where do sales teams lose momentum? What's your opinion?
I think as a rule where they lose momentum, it's because they didn't have the strategy, and by strategy I mean the execution strategy laid out properly in the first place. So your execution strategy should include a rhythm that says this is what we're doing on this particular day, this particular week, this particular month, whatever it happens to be. And you need to really stay focused around that rhythm to keep yourself on track and to keep yourself honest. People lose momentum because they get distracted, they go off on little tangents, they see something shiny over to the side and start to chase that instead of actually just sticking to what they said they would do and what they know through experience will make them successful.
You have just really captured something I'm passionate about, which is operating rhythm. That rhythm is often what salespeople are looking for when they join a business. If they've been successful before and they join a business, they are wanting that sales executive that they're working for to guide them around the rhythm of that organization. I had years and years ago, I worked for a company called Kelly Services. And one of the things that stood out to us there was the rhythm they taught us from the word go. You arrived, here was your rhythm. Now we're going to teach you rhythm. Now we're going to teach you flow. Once you're in the flow, you'll get momentum. And it was a winner every time. But we're not teaching our teams rhythm. And then once that rhythm comes, I think it sits within the pipeline. the pipeline then predicts the heartbeat of where I'm going.
It's interesting, isn't it? Really, the rhythm is just the habits.
Yeah.
And we've talked about for a long time, that the habits of successful people. That's your sales rhythm. A successful salesperson has a successful rhythm. That is the habits that they have entrenched. And those habits will change a bit from organisation to organisation and industry as to what exactly they need to be. But if you haven't worked out what is the most appropriate rhythm for your business, then I'd suggest you probably want to do that pretty quick.
Please, 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 because no amount of CRMing and forcing your people to show up. I had a conversation with a sales leader this last week who said, I am holding my people accountable, because we were talking about accountability. I said, that's not accountability. Accountability is when our people choose to show up and apply the discipline for themselves.
Yep.
What she was doing was management. So we have 4 steps we're going to take you all through, right? Before my next cartoon. This is the cartoon for any of you. But I really wanted to capture the flywheel. Now, the flywheel has 4 elements that Ken and I have just kind of touched on. And it does center for me around the customer and then the discipline that I've got to apply to make that flywheel get velocity. Would you agree with my statement?
Oh, absolutely. You have no choice.
Yeah. I have no choice. If this is the people we want, we've got to help them create the rhythm, and the rhythm is discipline. It's showing up again and again and getting better at it. So here's a little case study we've put together in cartoon form for you around a tech company and how they applied the flywheel to them. Let's have a look.
Hi there, I'm the Flywheel, and I'm here to revolutionize your sales process. You might say I'm a bit rounder than your average sales strategy. Let me tell you about Apex Tech Solutions, a B2B cybersecurity company that was struggling with their sales approach. They had a team of 20 sales reps across APAC, but despite a strong pipeline, they were facing some serious challenges. Inconsistent deal flow, long sales cycles, high customer churn, you name it, they were battling it. They were stuck in the old funnel mindset. Pour leads in the top, hope deals come out the bottom. But that approach left customers feeling, funneled. And once a deal closed, poof, the relationship often ended there. That's where I came in. I showed Apex Tech how to transform their sales velocity by adopting a more circular perspective. First, we aligned everything around the customer. No more close and ghost. We're talking long-term relationships here. We shifted focus from just win rates to customer lifetime value and expansion revenue. It's not just about the sale, it's about the journey. Then we introduced weekly pipeline reviews. Think of it like a health checkup for your deals. These reviews helped identify friction points, track deal progression, and forecast potential losses early on. We even created a customer advisory board. Nothing says we value you like asking for input, right? And finally, we smoothed out all the bumps in the road. Automated follow-ups, playbooks for stalled deals. You name it, we streamlined it. The results? Oh, they were spinning. Deals closed 38% faster, referrals shot up by 26%, and customer retention? It improved by a whopping 42%. Even the sales team was happier. No more churn and burn lead gen stress. Remember, a stagnant pipeline is just a sign of friction. Remove the obstacles, create momentum, and watch your sales velocity accelerate. So, ready to give your sales process a spin? Trust me, it's really good for business. So, what are you waiting for? Let's get your sales spinning in the right direction.
You like my little round bee? It's like a little round face.
I did, and I will just
yes,
make a point from what we were talking earlier on around the discipline of sticking to your rhythms, etc. People, for whatever reason, get fearful of discipline.
Yeah,
the discipline is not there to make people's lives harder or more difficult. It actually makes their life easier, and with that ease becomes more success, and with that success becomes greater happiness. But we have to really break this mindset of that discipline's a bad thing. or structure's a bad thing?
I'm going to add something. If I hire someone because they've got the gift of the gab, I'm going to churn and burn my clients.
Yep.
If I hire someone because they are focused, structured, show up every day, learn more, open, grow, come up, show again and again and again, I'm going to get momentum. Ken, when I joined consulting from Kelly, where I was a top performer, and then I joined a global consulting practice, I almost died because my sales cycle was so much longer. And I resigned in the first. I said, I'm sorry, this job isn't for me. And they said, I'm sorry, you're not going anywhere because you're showing up doing the right things. Will you hang in there? 3 months later, I tried to resign again. I remember I walked into the shareholder's office. He had one of those green pads on his desk. You know, those old desks that had the weird green pads on. And I said to him, I have to leave. I am not enjoying this. I'm not giving you value. You are wasting your money on me. And he said, you are not going anywhere because you're doing exactly what we need you to do. Within 9 months, my business broke. And all I did was I kept showing up. It wasn't easy. That's where discipline isn't easy, but it's worth it. So the 4 legs we've got that plug into this funnel, the one is effective time and territory management. It's the heartbeat of sales execution. We're going to talk about that. The CRM, do not fear that CRM. Embrace it. It is your strategic tool. It is the engine for you to drive your planning and execution. Sales forecasting, I love it. This to me is the heartbeat. When I don't read my forecast or plug stuff in, I am lost as a sales professional. And then the final one is obviously high-value client engagement. Keep those high-value clients as the wheels that keep moving you because they become the people that refer you to other high-value clients. Are we going to dive in? So what we're going to do is we're going to introduce each one to you, and then Ken and I are going to have a little bit of a fireside chat about that topic. Let's go. So the first one, obviously, is time and territory management. I heard this from a sales leader this week, and you're going to hopefully chuckle with me. Company car, company petrol. They say they can't do more than a certain amount of client calls a week because they are making appointments that side of the city, there and there, all over the shop because they're not disciplined and planned. So they are wasting their time. They are wasting company resources. They don't have time to plan because they're driving around, I call it like a headless chicken. Okay? They're working so hard for very little return. Okay? So that one about working harder, not smarter is my love. That was one of the first things I learned in that global company was like, we had to pay for our own petrol. So I was definitely going to learn how to do that better. And the second one was sales professionals don't chase deals. They manage their time with precision because it's coming. What do you think about this?
I think that haphazard approach that you used in the first example cannot be successful. So, yeah, the really simple thing for me in sales, and yeah, I always pick a Friday afternoon. Others will tell me there's better days, but my view is when you go home on a Friday afternoon, you want to know what you're doing next week.
Yes.
And you want to feel comfortable that what you're doing next week is enough for you to be successful.
Boom.
And ultimately, that's what your sales manager wants as well, exactly the same piece. So that key to planning about here's where I'm going to go, here's what I'm going to do, here's what I expect it to result in, that's critical because that actually makes me feel confident, makes me feel comfortable, and yeah, I'm not stressing out during the week. Plus, I know by doing it that way, I get more done.
You've just said that to me. This is why I'm going to do it next week. It's not just what I am doing.
But the why is critical. If you don't know why you're doing it, then yeah, have a think about whether or not you should be doing it because it's probably the wrong thing to do.
Love it, love it, love it. Because if my salespeople are just going out doing activity so that they can please me, it's a waste of my money.
Mm-hmm.
If I can teach them high-value activity that delivers outcomes, I had the CEO that said, follow the money. It's like, dude, isn't it what I can solve? He said, same. Go where you can solve the problems. Go where there's value. Okay, so here's the key thing, and then we'll dive into this. How it comes to life, time blocking and sales discipline. We've spoken about discipline. Oh, my God. I was in Malaysia with a client and our partner in Malaysia a while back, and the sales director was talking about discipline. And she's also our age. I don't know if it's our age. I'll just shut up. I mean, it's not young. But discipline is kind of something we did as part of showing up. And the people who can't be disciplined generally are not longevity in this kind of career. Territory segmentation. Okay. Who am I seeing? Why am I seeing them? How engaged are they? Are they highly engaged? Are they high value? How do I get them to high value, high engaged? And then, of course, pipeline. Where am I going? Why am I going there? What's in it? What am I shifting?
Excuse me.
I love the stat, 40% more productive and close higher value deals. So when I've got better territory management, my ability to increase my productivity skyrockets. Skyrockets. So if I'm highly more engaged in my productivity, what happens to my results? It's just that flywheel. It's a free. So let's talk about that, Ken. What are your thoughts around discipline, segmentation? I mean, we just spoke about segmentation just before, didn't we?
Yeah, look, it's exactly what I was saying about the why. So you need to have segmented your customers into what's the opportunity I've got with them, what's the industry they're in, and do we have a particular strength in that at the moment? Is there particular challenges that they have that we can solve that'll be valuable for them and for us? That's about the why. So why am I going to see them? You know, we see, and you constantly hear the stories about the sales people that show up with the donuts, and they're very popular. They just don't necessarily deliver anything. It's not what it was many moons ago about purely based on relationships. So you can't go in, you can't just be the nice person and expect results. You need to go in with a purpose, which means that you need to understand the why for yourself. The time blocking in the sales discipline really should come from that. Why am I doing this? What do I expect to achieve?
Nice.
And that in and of itself will help you to build that pipeline.
I love what you said there. Is this the right client? Is this the right industry? Can we serve them? Because if I don't ask myself those questions, I'm wasting my time. I always say time is money. And coming from Africa, we talk about no money, no honey. Okay?
Well, I think one of the other things that's really prevalent nowadays is it's not just time is money for us, it's also time is money for our customers.
Beautifully put.
So customers don't want you showing up just to be a nice person. They're too busy for that. They've got their jobs to do. They want you to show up with a reason.
And as you say that, I developed 12 years ago, actually, because I worked at Huthwaite as a partner, and before that I worked at Achieve Global as a national sales manager and senior leader, and I was on 2 global executive teams with us. And one of the things we came up with was, in this practice, what we call the value continuum. And on the left-hand side of the value continuum, we talk about being a professional visitor and transactional. And I would go, when you're a professional visitor, you're going to be friend-zoned, or they're going to dodge you when they arrive. But either way, it's low value and it's actually low relationship. They might like you, but they're not actually engaging with you in a way that allows you to help them. So why are you there? If you find they're a good friend, then hang out with them on a weekend. I know I'm blunt, but sometimes when I'm in that friend category, I can struggle to shift into the partner category. And I just want to touch on the heartbeat. I've introduced the funnel as the heartbeat or the compass often. That sets the direction for where I'm going, how I'm going to get there. And we've actually got to teach people how to own it and love it and not be fearful of it. I think sometimes they just dump stuff into the pipeline because that's what we told them to do, but they don't have a relationship with the pipeline or the funnel. And they need funnel relationship time. That's what I call it. Every day, that should be the first thing they open up. It should be the first thing they look at. It should be, if they're having the right conversations with their customers, it should be the stuff that they can shift through the dial. Let's talk about the next one. Oh my God, the dreaded CRM. How much do organizations pay for CRMs, Ken?
It costs you an absolute fortune, regardless of which one you use. They are all expensive.
And the thought behind the CRM is exactly what we want. But there's two schools of thought here. Salespeople feel they're doing the CRM so that it can be a management tool. It has to be, I'm just putting stuff in here for management. That's the first one. And the second one is they struggle to put stuff in here and even into the pipeline in case they've got to do a loss ratio because they don't want to experience shame or the feeling that they're not good enough for the job. Now, I've mentioned those two things. What do you think about the CRM?
Look, I think that the CRM, well used, helps you to track and determine what activities you need to do to be successful. And I'll give you a simple example. A number of years ago, I took over a company that had struggled from a sales perspective for an extended period of time. They'd been going backwards. They were highly commission-based. And because they were going backwards and their salespeople weren't hitting targets, they had massive churn. What they used to say to me is it takes people on average 2 years to be successful in this organisation, and most people don't stick around long enough because the commissions aren't high enough. They did have 4 people that were significantly better than everybody else in terms of results every month. So it's 4 out of a team of, I think it was 103 or something. What they were very good at was the discipline of putting stuff into the CRM. So we could see what they were doing. And there's no doubt they were all very, very busy. But when we actually pulled the data out of that CRM and started to use it, and we ran it at a conference, I put up stats. And I put up the stats for an AFL grand final, a rugby league grand final, and a netball grand final, and said who won. And of course, everybody says they won because they had more tackles, less turnovers, whatever it is. I then put up the stats for the sales team that says, here's the average of our top 4 performers, here's the average of everybody else. Who won? And there was a real lack of clarity around that. It was quite interesting. People weren't sure. But what stood out like a beacon was that the people that were successful, so the 4 that had won, they spent a lot more time prospecting. They made a lot more cold calls. From there on, the ratios were pretty consistent. But it became very obvious that by using that CRM to plan, people could look at it and go, I know that if I make 10 calls, I'll get 4 follow-up calls. If I make 4 follow-up calls, I'll get 2 leads. If I make 2 leads, I'll get 1 sale. The actual stats were so consistent, it was incredible. And people were able to start to look at that for themselves and with those stats determine how they best spent their time.
Perfect. So I'm going to use an example of the consulting business I worked in. We didn't have a CRM, but we had financial data. This was before, this is 20 years ago. And every year as a sales consultant, I had to present my plan for the year. And it had to be strategic. And it had to be based on my activities and what we've done and how we were going. And it became a really beautiful deep dive. But what it did teach me was to do that regularly versus once a year, number one. And I think this is where we've got to change the mindset of our sales leaders, our business owners, and our salespeople so that they can look at the CRM as an opportunity to be the engine of their success from a strategic planning perspective. Because I love this stat here. It increases velocity. And velocity is that flow. And this is what it does. We can map our client data for growth, just like you've said. We can map what we're doing for growth. We use it as our strategy hub. A lot of salespeople have got the ability to use Power BI, all those kinds of things. So what we're talking about here is a 42% improvement in forecasting accuracy and 34% increase in sales productivity. Now, we're not trying to teach you today something you don't know, but what I want to challenge you with is how you approach it. As a business owner and a salesperson and a sales leader that might be dialed into this call today with Ken and I, what we want to challenge you is, we know the CRM is important. Can we change how we look at it? Thoughts, Ken?
I think one of the key pieces in this is the salesperson needs to own the CRM. So rather than use it as a management tool with a leader going to the salesperson to say, I've gone through your CRM and I've looked at your pipeline, or I've done this or I've done that. You need to turn that on its head so the salesperson comes to their leader for their weekly one-on-one to say, here's what I'm doing and here's why, and I've pulled this straight out of the CRM. So I'm doing this based on my information, my data, and what's important to me. And we can then have a really valuable conversation around that.
I love what you've said. I'm going to use a real live example. When I was in consulting, I had this sales leader who was all about bums on seats, and she just used to look at the forecast, and I'd feel like I had gone through an interrogation every time I met her. And I was trying to sell the strategy to results, so the holistic way, and she wanted me just to move a box. And because that was what we were taught by our organization, but she was trying to get revenue in, but she was doing it in a way that was not empowering me to own it. And I remember sitting outside a client's office, and I still had a Filofax. I whipped the Filofax out and I started looking at my numbers, and I looked at my 30, 60, 90-day numbers and my forecast. And I was like, I've got to understand this. And it just kind of hit me. I think it was one of those moments where all the neural pathways slammed into each other. And immediately I knew exactly how to do it, what I was looking at, how I was going to do it. And it suddenly I was on it, not just in it, and I owned it. And I arrived for my next meeting with her and I said, right, I'm going to walk you through my numbers. I'm going to walk you through my challenges. I'm going to tell you what's going to land where, and this is why, and this is how I'm going to do it. I presented it back to her in such a clear, concise, and deliberate manner that I don't think she was expecting that, number one. She was quite taken aback. In 6 months, I took her job. And I didn't take it because I wanted it. I was asked if I wanted it, and I said no. And then they kept asking me, and eventually I took it because I understood the flywheel. And I think as a sales leader, if you are pushing people into being accountable, you are micromanaging them. If you are allowing them and teaching them how to own their number, understand it, recognize the concepts around this, practice the right disciplines, they will step up and present to you what they're owning. That is when the flywheel gets incredible momentum. You've seen that, haven't you?
Yeah, you will get far more success. You'll get far happier people, and your success will become more sustainable because happy people stay and they continue to do the things that made them successful. So it's a long-term piece, but that's very much about people actually understanding their own business and taking full accountability for their own business. So your role as a leader then becomes to help and support them. When they come to you, it's not coming to you to be told what to do or how to do it. It's coming to you for help, for support, for improved performance.
Now, I took a sales business through this, and it took us about 9 months to shift it.
Yeah.
It's not quick, is it?
No, it's not quick and it's not easy. It's incredibly rewarding, but the reality is you're talking about change, and change is a difficult thing to manage. So the time you need to spend with your people on this is quite significant, but it's well worth your while.
Nice. And so the business leaders that are struggling to get those results, stop investing in sexier salespeople and start investing in transformation programs that shift the dial. I'm going to introduce the next one, sales forecasting and predictability. Oh, this is that gut feeling one. As I said, when they say to me, trust me, it's coming in, I want to pass out because we've not had conversations along the way. I don't understand, why is it coming in? What are you seeing? What tells you it's coming in? What's some of the strategies you've put behind this to ensure the customer sees the value? Have you taken it to that next level? Have you got all the decision makers around the table? No. My client just promised me it's coming in. Then that's a low value discussion, isn't it?
Yeah, the reality in that, your first thought there was correct. Why? So somebody's telling me it's their gut. I go, okay, why? Why is that your gut? And the key question for me is, so why does the customer need to finalise this deal in that time frame?
What's
because
in it?
that's the question that you need to be able to understand. Why do they want to close it by this date?
Ooh, I love it. This is that strategic component that's required in the sales conversations. I love breaking the funnel, the stages I'm walking through to get momentum, into what am I doing? What does commitment look like from their side? How do I know it? Is there value? And then how can I play that? Because if it gets stuck, where am I going? What am I learning? How do I re-engage it? How do I get them back in and excited to move to that next stage, to be in the partnership and the relationship with me?
Yeah, very much so. And that's just about what do they need? What are they going to gain out of this relationship? And that's important to them. And they want to do it, and they want to do it for a particular reason by a particular date.
Can the reasons change?
Reasons change all the time. That's the reality of business. So if you look at the world at the moment, the current political situation and the change that's happening, there's many, many businesses, not just in Australia, but around the world at the moment that are pivoting pretty quickly, because the harsh reality with the tariffs and everything in place, things are changing.
So what we've got to do as business owners, leaders, and if we're a sales consultant dialing in today, is make sure you've got your risk cover. Mm-hmm. Make sure you're not just talking to one big fat whale of a client, that when they don't land because something's happened, you don't end up with nothing. Okay, so this is what this area covers: data-driven forecasting. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And I'm old school. I really like percentages. I like gross value, expected value. I like understanding that gap, because that allows me to know on the averages what might come in. Because this is when you start playing on your business as a sales professional versus just in the business and doing the work. You have to spend time sitting on it, looking at it, not being scared about it. When we do that properly, we get such an increase in revenue. And that slippage just reduces dramatically because I know who I'm talking to.
Yeah, I think that the reality on this is if you're really clear on what you're doing and you're driven by the data to go to the right places, do the right things, you'll do more of it.
I will.
So apart from closing that particular deal faster, that in and of itself creates time for you to move on to the next and to do multiple things at once. But it's the data that makes you make the right decisions. If I'm guessing at what to do, then the probabilities of me getting that decision right, clearly lessen.
So here's the challenge. If you are dialed in today and your sales process does not have clarity around the activities that your team should be doing roughly in this area of this activity, so for example, it's moving from a lead to an actual client. What actually is the definition of that? What does the client do to show you? What should the salesperson do? You will not have the practical understanding. People won't know. They'll make a guess. And you'll have inconsistency across language, across the team, inconsistency across measures. And then how would you ever have a pipeline that's accurate?
People will do their best to make a guess. That's the reality. People will try hard. They'll provide their best guess. Unfortunately, that's not enough for us to run a business on.
And this is where there needs to be time spent on crafting these elements that become the building blocks for the flywheel within your organization. And it has to be connected to your organization. You need to understand clarity and definition because sales is a process. It's relationship driven, it's strategy driven, it's action driven, and it's a process. That's how the flywheel moves. It moves no other way. And if there's a lack of that, how do I coach you if we don't have common understanding about something? That's the biggest pitfall, and that's when gut feel drops in. Now, I'm not concerned. I know we've got 15 minutes, but we've got one more section, okay? High value client engagement, the key to the flywheel momentum, okay? This is really interesting because high value clients drive repeat business and referrals, long-term profitability. high-value clients often receive less attention. This is a McKinsey study in 2023 due to poor sales planning and time mismanagement. Have you seen this, Ken?
You see it all the time. And really what it comes down to is we take customers for granted.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got people that we recognise are high-value clients. They've been consistent clients, and for whatever reason, we assume that they will stay that way.
Yeah.
And they might until something changes in their business, or they're approached by somebody else, or a variety of other reasons. The reality on those high-value clients, they're no different to anybody else. You need to stay close, and you need to understand their business and their needs, so that you can help to solve their issues and sell them more and sell something to them again the next time. If you're going to take them for granted, you will eventually ultimately get what you deserve.
I do love that. And I want to say something. Sometimes we don't want to categorize our clients as a low value client, but it is about what we do and what they can do with what we do. And somebody else, they might be a high value client. But for us, they're a low-value client based on what we do. And we've got to teach our people this. I use this analogy of chickens versus eagles. Can I share it?
Please.
So we've got this farmyard. Of course, it's a cartoon in my own brain again. The farmyard, we've got eaglets and chickens running around. And on a nice dried-out branch, there's this squadron of eagles. And my question always is, I want to be an eagle because I want to go after high-value clients. I want to be deliberate in my focus, and I want to see them and bring them home. The low-value clients, if I run after low-value clients, I behave like a chicken. I get very excited. I'm very scattered. I just run, trying to collect everything. Eaglets are the guys that have potential to shift the behavior from being a chicken to being an eagle. I want to hire eaglets because I want to make sure that people know that we should be going after higher value clients. And if it's a higher value client and they're not engaged with us, how do we get engagement with them? But highly engaged and high value clients is the place where we want to play. What's the
I think quite often we get sucked into the lower value clients because they are so transactional. So they will demand time because they will constantly come and say, I want this, I want that. We've got to be very, very cautious. You don't want to dismiss them because if they're transactional, then you can probably get the short-term sale. But you need to recognise that it's price-driven or something very peculiar to you that's driven. It's not necessarily a sustainable piece, and I need to look at a higher value people to balance my business out. So I'm not saying dismiss them, but don't kid yourself that your business can be successful based solely on them.
If we're 100%, and if we're talking about the flywheel concept today, and you've got the right customers within your organization, and that will be an array of A, B, C, D customers. But if all your customers are the C's and the D's, and you don't have A's and B's, you've got a really, really big problem because the C's and D's are going to suck 80% of your time.
At least. And then where are you spending your time? And you are not going to be profitable, the profit that you have to make from a business perspective. So how do we shift it? I mean, this is interesting because how do we shift the dial? So here's some strategies for you. And by the way, each person that's dialing into today will get a pack. We'll send you a strategy. We'll send you an assessment to do because, Ken and I, of course, want to keep talking to you, but There's three things here: proactive account management, personalized value propositions, expansion and referral strategies. When we do these better, we get 25% higher customer lifetime value and 35% faster deal cycles. What do you think, Ken? Look, clearly proactive account management makes sense. You need to be on the front foot. You need to be talking with your customers. You need to understand your customers, and you cannot deliver a personalised value proposition unless you've done that. Now, too often what we see is because we're not proactive in that account management, we try and deliver generic value propositions, which is essentially trying to force what you think is valuable down your customer's throat, whether they value it or don't. whether they need it or not, we're going, but this is our value proposition. It's wonderful. So we need to be really clear that proactive account management is about how you engage with those high-value accounts, the questions you ask and what you need to do to understand their business and understand their problems and their needs, because only then can you start to step your way through to the personalised value propositions.
Powerful. Powerful. There's so much within the flywheel, isn't there? But
it's enormous.
It's enormous. And these are the practices. Sometimes, and having come from, being part of two really large global organizations where we were teaching salespeople how to sell. Achieve Global did this really well back in the day, and they no longer exist as an organization. But what they did was they did teach strategy. Strategic sales coaching is an absolute no-brainer. We need to be doing that. Putting the right strategic frameworks in place so that there's clarity across the organization, we have to do that. Stop micromanaging your people. It kills their soul. Rather be clear, step into those weekly conversations. Ken and I had a conversation this week on the podcast where we were talking about catching up with your team weekly. Powerful. But why? Why would you recommend that, Ken?
I think that you will struggle to be sustainably successful without it, to be honest. For me, it's very much about the salesperson coming in to say, here's what I did last week, and it's what I said I was going to do, or it's not. And if it's not, that's potentially okay for whatever reasons. And did it deliver what you and I both thought it would deliver? And if it did, wonderful. If it didn't, then let's have a chat about that to make sure we understand it for the future, because we need to change what we do going forward. It's then a simple piece around, say, here's my plan for next week. Here's why I'm doing it. Here's what I expect it to achieve. As a sales leader, ideally, what the salesperson has bought is wonderful, and you're very content that what they're doing will be enough to be successful. If not, it's an opportunity to discuss that and help them to improve before they go out and waste a week. So really, it's about giving comfort and confidence to the salesperson and the sales leader that what they are doing will be enough for them to be successful. And if they're successful, then the sales leader will be successful. So it's happy days all around.
Boom, boom, boom. So I'm hearing this. Firstly, let's get our sales leaders the strategic skills they need to lead the flywheel.
Mm-hmm.
Let's create the right frameworks in our organization that support the flywheel to get velocity. Let's engage accountability in our salespeople by teaching them why they can love it, how it works, and then get them to show up and practice it.
Mm-hmm.
Simple, right?
It's very simple, and the next step from that is they take pride in it.
Thank you.
If they're doing it, they're taking pride in it, then we have every opportunity to be successful.
So I'm going to be very bold and say, the sexiest CRM will not make your money come in, leaders. I'm just telling you that right now. Hiring the best salesperson, one out of a group, will not shift your revenue numbers. Coming up with the best marketing strategy to drive lead gen will not translate it into the flywheel. There has to be some fundamental strategic elements put in place, teaching, measurement, practice again and again and again and again and again to get momentum and then velocity. I've seen it change a sales team in my world. Have you?
Absolutely. If you work well together with the sales team to get the execution plans at a high level, everybody is following the rhythm and executing to those plans, the success is enormous. And it becomes highly sustainable, which is the other key piece in this. I
love sustainability because that's what we're looking for from an organizational. And I also love this concept that once we put it in place, the consistency we create when we bring new people on board and the consistency in our sales coaching creates consistency at senior management level, because we're able to confidently speak to where our sales numbers are, what's actually happening, and how we're going to drive success in the future. So should we ask if anyone has any questions? Now, in order to do this, you just drop your questions into your chat box. So I'm not sure if anyone has any questions for us, because of course I get so excited. I just want to make sure my Q&A is open. Yep, Q&A is open. Are there any questions from anyone? Because Ken and I are really passionate about this, and there's no questions coming through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just show this last element, and then Ken, we can maybe leave, we've got 4 minutes left, leave people with some insights. The flywheel concept, when put in place, it's a transformation piece. It's not a stick it with duct tape and hope it comes together piece. It's a systematic piece that we've put in place to transform the organization. Instead of chasing the deals, we build momentum. Instead of reacting to problems, we proactively manage the pipeline. That to me was my biggest shift, to embrace that pipeline. And this is one of the biggest things for me. Instead of competing against each other, we win together. That's what the flywheel does. It changes my mindset as a sales professional. It changes my leaders' relationship with me and their mindset in how they engage with me. And it changes how we look at what we do every day, because we really become value creators. That's my 2 cents worth. Ken, what would you like to add?
Look, just to emphasize that point about we're now doing it together. Yeah, it's not about individual success. This is actually about the team success and organisational success, and we all get to share in that. So it becomes a wonderful sales culture to work in.
I love that you've said that, because the biggest change I saw when I transformed a sales team, they were underperforming and they were all going to lose their jobs. And that's when they tapped me on the shoulder and said, would you please take the job? And I was like, oh, no. It's like I took that job and we turned them around from failing. And these were not complicated, sexy salespeople. The kids that were hungry to make a difference. And I taught them rhythm. That's what I taught them. And we taught them to think strategically on their business. And we taught them to take hold of the opportunities that were going to shift the dial. They smashed it out of the park. And these young people are now not so young anymore, but they've all taken on senior leaders roles across the world. I can't tell you how proud I am of them. We set our people up for success when we shift the dial and the flywheel comes into effect. Do you think it'll take courage for business owners and leaders to shift the way they've been working, to change it, to do more of the accountability content and application, Ken?
Clearly it takes courage. Any change requires a degree of courage. What I would say, though, is if you haven't got the courage to take that step and to make that change, does that mean you can honestly stand there and say you're very happy with the status quo? Mm. And do you think that status quo will be maintained if you are? The reality particularly for business owners, nobody owns a business unless they've already got courage. You didn't buy it or set it up in the first place unless you had a level of courage.
I love what you've said. I absolutely love it. Well, this is us. We have hit the end mark. Ken and I've loved speaking to you. We're going to send you some information. We'll send you an overview of the stats we've created. We'll send you a little self-assessment so that you can assess your sales business and your business and understand where the gaps lie. And of course, we'd always love to chat with you to help you transform your organization and get your flywheel working to get velocity and sales results. We're both seasoned sales leaders, and we've got seasoned sales leaders across our community, across the world. So we're looking forward to supporting you. Thank you for dialing in today, and we just want to say bye.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Have a great day. Take care then. Bye.
Bye.